Welcome everyone to MSI Cooldown at the conclusion of day 3 of the Rumble stage. EG will take the victory in our 6th and final game of the day over the Saigon Buffaloes. We talked about the importance of this matchup in terms of EG's chances up in the top 4, and they will solidify themselves, at least for today, into that 4th position. So they're going to feel happy, though Azael maybe not happy with the way in which the win came. It was a very odd game.
It was. It was really a weird game. Yeah. I'm not even sure why it felt so bizarre to me, but it just like, it felt like EG, everything that was happening on screen was always good for EG, but they were just like falling further behind in the early game, right? Like I think they were kind of over moving from lanes and stuff to try to make plays happen. It felt like maybe, you know, earlier we heard JoJo talking in an interview about, hey, sometimes we have people who are saying, let's not make aggressive plays, but like we really need to make them. So maybe this was a little bit of an overcompensation where they were just trying to create action even when maybe they shouldn't have, because Impact was moving a lot. We saw that Vulcan was moving a lot. They were losing plates in both top and bot.
In both.
Exactly. So even though it felt like they were never really in danger of losing, because I think they had great scaling and they did kind of dominate a lot of the fights, it was just weird. It was like, why are they falling behind?
Kills are going one way, Gold Lead is climbing in the other direction.
Yeah.
It was very odd.
And I feel like a lot of it also goes back to what we said earlier about mid-jungle. Like JoJo Inspired had a great game. Vulcan also, like sure, you know, they're moving a lot, they're losing plates. Some of that also just down to, you know, Danny making some mistakes and he gets solo killed by Shogun. But like Vulcan, I think Masu making up for it, having some like huge plays on the top side and around mid lane. So overall, I think EG had some good things. It's nice to see them much more willing to scrap. And on the opposite side, a bit strange that Saigon Buffalo, as the game went on, I think feel like got more and more scared and just kind of turtled in their base.
Like we've talked so much about, oh, their team identity, because you look back to the BCS, and even in the group stage, this is a team that's explosive. They're going to go for all the big plays. And like there were some little flashes of that, but it felt like once they started losing, I mean, you're playing Cannon Nocturne. You kind of have to get out of your base and find flanks, find engages. But it kind of felt like they just started playing not to lose. And we're like, hey, we have Veigar and Ezreal. Maybe we can win later. So they didn't really try anything for about 15 minutes. And EG just got full run of the map. They hit the ornaments. They start taking over enemy jungle. The Goldie starts going their way. They hit Mountain Soul. And it's like, well, you don't have any chance anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely clammed up a little bit, it felt like. One other point I'll just throw in is we did kind of have the discussion at the top of the day around EG's drafting from domestic to, you know, LCS playoffs, and then here on the international stage with the changed meta. This, at least in isolation, compositionally, I like this look.
Me too, yeah.
For EG, getting that stable. I mean, Ornn, just a phenomenal champion, but it's a stable top laner. You've got Danny onto that Kai'Sa. You still have a playmaker for JoJo.
Exactly.
In
could have just stopped after the Ornn. You're like, they got the Ornn.
I
love the draft. There were 4 other people there too.
I feel like it's
they were doing some
that
stuff.
Like the stability plus also having like these guys on key playmakers is what I'm happy to see for EG.
Well, and it's also just nice to see a strong Wukong game as well. Like, because I think back to the draft against G2 that people were really critical of, where it was like, Wukong's up, LeBlanc's up. You're not taking either of them, right? Which kind of made you feel like, are you just not confident on these champions or what's happening here? Because I do think you have to be able to play the kind of tourney OPs. Otherwise, you're just really gimping yourself in draft. You either have to spend extra bans and give over some of the kind of preferential picks that the other team has, or you just like let it through and you're always going to be playing against these champions that are kind of just stronger than yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps finding a little direction here at the end of day number 3 for EG. After another 1-in-1 day, though, Lore is now joined by EG's Inspired in the Verizon post-game interview. Take it away.
Thank you so much for joining me for this interview. You take down the Saigon Buffaloes in the last game of day 3. Well, how was this game for you? Felt like a fiesta, kind of.
Yeah, after seeing the draft, we're like, well, they have a lot of engage, but we also have a lot of engage, so the game will be a lot of fighting. And I feel like I just didn't play well enough in the early fights. I think it was a lot of mistakes that someone was left on like 1 HP and we already thought he's dead, so I was like changing the target to start hitting the other guy. And the first guy just didn't die, and somehow they managed to like turn the fights around, like stole some time. So yeah, the game became very chaotic. And at one point, there was like a big fight on bot lane that went in our favor. And after that, I think we just had control over the game.
Right, you made it work in the end. So that's what matters. It's interesting that you reflect this way on your performance, because I feel that since the beginning of MSI, you've been playing so well, really shining through EG. Honestly, how would you rate your performance and how strong you feel at MSI?
I think I played pretty well most of the games. It's hard right now to remember every game. I didn't play well in all of them, but I think in most of them. So I think I played well. I think we just need to play a bit better as a team, and I can see us winning against teams like G2. I don't know about the Asian teams. I think they are a bit higher level, but maybe if we will play very well, we can take them down as well.
That's interesting. What makes it so hard for you to match against the Asian team style-wise compared to the LCS maybe and what you're used to playing?
I think in LCS people didn't really challenge us at fighting. Like when we take fight on Rift Herald or Drakes or anything, people usually just give up, and then the game goes forward for us with a little lead. And here the Asian teams are always there to fight you, and it's even harder to win your lanes as well because they are so good in lane. And yeah, I think that's the biggest difference. They just try to win the game, not like teams in LCS.
I know that usually when it comes to international events, especially in the jungle, it's much different from the Western style to the Asian style. Have you learned much so far as a jungler? Because I know this is not your first international experience, but yeah, have you been surprised by the Asian junglers? I'm thinking of Wei and Honor, of course.
I mean, not like surprised. I already knew that they're very good. I think the biggest difference is that they play well around their laners. Like in EU or NA, I feel like if your laners are losing, you can still do something to help them and make the game in your favor. But when like Korean junglers play, I feel like, or Chinese, then their laners start winning. They will play well around them to like snowball and get the lead through that to win the game. So it's like very hard to start the snowball when it already starts. And I think that's like the biggest difference.
I see. And now when it comes to the meta, I think we see a lot of Viego, of course, a lot of Graves, Ban and Wukong also, which you got to flex on today. A bit, some words maybe about the meta and especially about Viego because his win rate is really low. So what is your understanding of the pick and why is it so praised even though the champion has not so much success, I would say?
I think you just want the jungler that can contest early and be stronger Rift Herald, because it looks like a lot of games are decided already on the Rift Herald that the team that wins the teamfight then gets a kill or two and gets a Rift and then is able to get first tower, is in the lead for the rest of the game. So champions like Viego, Lee Sin, Grace maybe not that much, but Wukong is very strong on Rift as well. I think that's why people just play those champs, because they give you like the biggest power in the team fight. And yeah, the Graves is a bit different. He's more like a control champion that just wants to get vision for his team and be like first on the objectives and poke people. So he's a little bit different.
On role Graves being kind of OP.
Yeah.
Right now, a couple words on EG maybe before we end. You are solidifying your position in top 4 right now. But what can we expect from EG in the remaining of the second round robin for you guys to really get into that top 4 and maybe higher?
I think we just need to, I don't know, not play good on the team fights. I think, as I said about the Rift Herald before, I feel like we just need to focus on this the most, because before the tournament we kind of knew it, but now it shows even more that all of the games are kind of finished at 10 minutes or like you get a big lead. So we need to focus on how to rotate well and how to play out the team fights in the early game. So I think hopefully we'll do it better than enemy teams and we can win the games.
Yeah, still have a lot of games to do so. Inspired, thank you so much for the interview. Good luck on the rest of the games.
Thank you.
And Dash, back to you.
Thank you so much, Laura. Great to hear from Inspired. Interesting little tip of the cap to what he at least maybe sees as the power ranking of the teams. Just before we went live for Cooldown, Lyric, you said, I feel like after today, I don't have any clue anymore who would be considered a favorite in this tournament. He seems to give a little bit more of an edge to both RNG T1, at least in terms of how he feels EG can match up against them specifically as compared to G2.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, he's the one screaming these guys.
Right.
Like stylistically could be there, but man, I feel like every team just looks so messy right now. There's so many mistakes. There's some good moments, right? I mean, obviously G2 have had great games. RNG's game today was excellent, but it feels like there's exploitable holes in every team for anyone to be able to exploit.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting. And I always like hearing, Inspired get interviewed because he's very honest, right?
Yeah.
He's one of those players who will just give you his opinion. He doesn't really care what you think about it. And I think Laura had some great questions for him. But it's interesting to hear that little, like, I think people take it as a little bit of a dig at G2. And he had another interview that I think people took some exception to, where it's like, oh, like, how do you feel about the new G2? And he's like, well, it's caps and 4 players. They're the same, right? And so you have to also read into it a little bit. Like, he competed against these guys. You know, he won MVP in Europe. So maybe he kind of just like, isn't as impressed because he's like, I know G2 or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's really hard to argue, at least based on stage games, that you should favor T1 over G2, right? RNG after today, I can see, okay, you can make the argument, hey, G2 had a really bad day. RNG absolutely clapped G2 today, but T1 has not shown enough that like I am willing to power rank them based on stage games. Scrim's always a different story.
1000% agree. Also, take everything he just said with the grain of salt that they are 0-5 against G2.
Yeah.
So, you know, while he might feel they have a better shot against them, it's still, at least as of now, feels unlikely that they would find a win over any of those teams above them in the standings. Now, we say all that, and part of what threw the whole day on its head was, of course, the upset win for PSG over G2, and every second counts, and thanks to the reliable Cisco network, PSG secured a crucial team fight win at Dragon to hand G2 their first defeat after 24 games of straight wins.
Yeah, and you know, we just saw in this team fight, again, PSG had already been playing so well, but Kaiwing coming in, finding the key engage onto the enemy AD carry, setting up players like Unify to be able to get in there and do the damage. I mean, just huge moment coming out from PSG, and again, such a surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was a really interesting game because it was the first one that has bucked the trend of like minor region versus major region, right? Literally, we have played, I don't know, 25, 30 games now at this point of matchups between major and minor through groups and rumbles. This is the first time an emerging region, a minor region, whatever you want to call them, has actually taken down a major team in the whole event, which is very atypical. So it's exciting to see that it has finally happened. And obviously it's hugely exciting for PSG and means a lot for their tournament chances. Because they lost the EG in that first round robin, it was important for them to, you know, find an upset win to kind of really claw back.
Massive win. That was the second game of the day. Again, like I said, it kind of turned the whole day on its head, and we saw a lot more interesting stuff come out. It brings us to where we stand at the end of today, where it is now RNG in sole possession of first place. Again, we were talking about that matchup against G2 today as a possible tie. Just gaining that tie to, you know, to be in contention for first, and now they own it. G2 drops down to 4-2 with an 0-2 day. Meanwhile, T1 has their best day of the Rumble stage, going 2-0 to slot back up into a tie for second place. Yes, EG has a one-game lead over PSG, but that's a dangerous position to be in as PSG seems to ramp up through the Rumble stage as well.
I mean, especially because at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, EG has a one-game lead, but we've had this happen, you know, as LCS fans 1,000 times.
Too many times.
You know, even if you beat them in the first round robin, you're one game up. If they beat you in the second robin, it goes to tiebreakers. Guess how tiebreakers usually go for NA? We're like 1 in 3,000, so it's not the best record all time.
I've been there for all of them.
Yes. Unfortunately, I'm usually casting those, and you can see the hope drain from my eyes.
Are you casting on tiebreaker day?
Yes,
he
I
casts
am.
EG, G2, and tiebreakers.
I'm hosting. You're casting on
It's
tiebreaker
over.
day. Uh-oh. That's
You better pray that EG locks up tomorrow, because I am absolutely a curse.
Very, very scary spot to be in. As we said earlier today, RNG defeated G2 in the fight for first, but we were also able to catch up with Ben in his Verizon post-game interview to understand how they took them down this time around.
But talking more about the matchup versus G2, they won the first game, you won the second, which was really important in the race for first. Can you talk me through the adaptation and what you learned from G2 since the first game to win this one this time?
那其实，在你们目前和 G2 的2次交手当中，第一局是 G2 获得胜利，那这一次你们是斩获了胜利，所以也想问一下，可能在过程当中你们是有获得哪些的可能改进或者提升吗？或者说从 G2 那里可能有学到什么，然后呢运用到比赛当中，然后在今天很漂亮的拿下胜利呢？
我主要是感觉可能是我个人在上一次melee集训的时候打的有一些急躁吧，就是不管是出装方面啊，还是就是做的动作方面。然后这次既然选下了同样的英雄，就是格温嘛，那我这次肯定要做出一些改变的，想着怎么样就是能让队友玩得更舒服一点，然后整体团战看起来更协调一点嘛。所以我这次就主要是针对我自己，然后做出一些改变，然后这次就拿下了，我也挺开心的。
So in terms of my personal performance, I think for the previous game against G2, I really played too rushly. I just rushed a bit in the actual game. And also, so for today's game, for the Atom build and for the strategies, I would like to make some changes because I have picked the same champion Scream for this 2 matchup. So for today's game, I would like to just play more safely to help my teammates to build more leads. And also, we would like to have a more cooperative team fights to have a very good synergy for the whole team to win the game.
It was an amazing performance from RNG. Well, thank you very much, Bin, for this interview. Xie. And Wendy, thank you so much for the translation. Back to you in Berlin.
I mean, that pretty much sums it up exactly, right?
Yeah.
You know, thought very critically about the way that he matched up against G2 the first time around. Maybe played a little impatiently.
Way less risk.
Too much risk the first time. And this time around, yeah, taking less risk. And in doing so, we mentioned very early on in that top lane 1v1, actually got the advantage as a result of that patient play.
Yeah, I mean, even the summoner spell choice, right? Like, you know, I think most people would say, oh, even if it's a bad matchup, Bin will just go Ignite and try to kill them anyway. He actually went Exhaust. He, you know, built slightly more defensively. He played slightly more defensively. He was happy to trade farm because Gala was getting massive advantages. You don't have to be the carry every time. And I think an RNG with, you know, kind of a maturing Bin and Wei playing really well is absolutely terrifying because the form that they showed today is really hard to stop.
That's where I will come back to, again, kind of the question you raised before we came on for Cooldown around who would be considered a favorite. I think if you isolate, obviously, to just today, RNG seemed to unlock that next level with Bin and Wei stepping up, finding a new gear. This would be the version of a team that I would fear the most in this tournament. You'd probably argue holistically, at least from my perspective, that G2 has still been the top performing team across the tournament. But again, it's starting to get murky.
Yeah, I feel like for RNG, like if Bin can be stable, it's fine. I feel like Wei is really the one we need to say stay at that top level.
Yeah.
Like he was such a big factor in their MSI win last year. But the thing about RNG that is just very hard to reconcile with is that a lot of their wins are never flashy or convincing. Like today's definitely was. But even think back to LPL finals, it's like a lot of their wins are messy. A lot are
Comebacks,
scrappy
team
and
fighting.
exactly. So it's just one of those things where I think if RNG do end up being able to take this MSI, they're going to take us all on a wild ride to get there.
I like wild rides, man. Put me on that roller coaster. Speaking of which, we've got 2 more days of Rumble stage play. We'll take a look at tomorrow's schedule to see what's in store. We are going to get a G2 versus PSG Talon rematch right off the bat, which I'm super excited for before EG and T1 go up against each other in the second matchup of the day. Royal never give up against the Saigon Buffalo, still looking for their first win of the Rumble stage before G2 and T1 take to the stage as well. Lots of really big matchups in all honesty, especially as we narrow down and there's less room to drop games, you know, for any of these teams, especially those who are right on the cusp, either in that 3, 4, 5 position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, EG really going to be searching for an upset win. You know, if they can get a win over or T1 or RNG, you know, that sets them up so incredibly well because they're already 1 game ahead of the pace there on PSG. So then even if you lose that potential tiebreaker, if you've got an upset win, hey, you maybe just advance anyway. So it's a very, very big day. And G2 with, again, some tough matchups. You know, they're going up against T1, obviously, who we've kind of cooled on, but G2 coming off a rough day where they were upset by PSG. They play them again, so they're going to be hungry for some revenge. But then have a very, very tough matchup against T1.
I was going to say tomorrow could actually be like a really great day for PCS fans and maybe scary for NA, right? Because getting the rematch against G2, we saw obviously very winnable. And then they're playing up against Saigon Buffalo. So, I mean, PCS might actually be able to walk out with a 2-0 day.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? And then, yeah, you're just kind of looking at the mental game.
I don't think G2 is going to lose to them twice.
You don't?
No, I don't think G2 is going to lose to PSG again. I really can't see it.
I don't think they should, but I definitely think it's doable.
I don't think anybody would think they should. I guess my question would be, so what is the learning for G2 today? What's the approach for tomorrow?
G2 is going to play tanks tomorrow.
Okay, it's match team fight. It's match team fight for team fight. You think at that point?
Okay. I think that like you look at how they were really, really successful in the LEC playoff run. You look at a lot of their best games, their most dominant games. It was with Broken Blade playing tanks. It was with them building for 5v5. Caps is going to get you an edge. Even when they got stumped by RNG, he was clapping Xiaohu in lane. Yeah. You don't need to get fancy. You can just play Ornn and Sion every single game. Caps is blasting everyone. You're going to create advantages there, almost guaranteed. It feels like you have the best mid jungle duo. Play towards that, play towards your bot lane, chill on the top side, build for 5v5. And if they do that, I just can't see them losing to PSG. So that's what I'm expecting personally.
I feel like just to like throw it back to a segment you guys did, we just need to go back to just the team fight comp, right?
Yes.
Just the team fight comp.
Team
They were
fight
the
comp.
first
Team
one.
fight comp.
They were the first ones to come in and be like, just pick these big 5v5 wombos, and it worked pretty much every single game.
All right, there you have it.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. Maybe Azael could have.
Team fight comp.
That's a team fight comp. There it is. Lots in store tomorrow. We are narrowing towards that knockout stage. Each of these teams really putting all they've got out onto the stage. That's going to be it for tonight. Make sure you tune back in for tomorrow, day 4 of the Rumble stage. Until then, stay healthy, stay safe, be good to each other. Good night.
All of you die, one at a time. Those are the facts, we don't talk die.